Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. As I've stated in the last couple of videos, I'm not actually here right now. This was pre-recorded a while ago and you're seeing it. Whenever you're seeing it, I've had to record a bunch of videos and edit them, and I will be releasing one every Monday instead of my normal schedule. I am looking after my ailing grandfather at the moment, and I will be doing that for 1 to 2 months. I talk more about that in my Coffee Thoughts episode 6 video. If you want to check that out, you can find out the reasons behind it. If not, fair enough. After 2 months, I will be back to a more normal schedule. It might be a little lighter in the beginning, just to get back into it, and then I'll see where it goes from there. Because I'll still be helping looking after my grandfather, but specifically, I'll be looking after him a lot more in these next 2 months. Debating. I saw something on a clip from Dr. Phil on YouTube that actually in debates doesn't happen very often anymore, and I think it's important to talk about. So there's a psychological idea when you're debating someone, and I want to actually, before I get into that, I want to define a couple terms. So like when I talk about debating someone, I think more of like an actual, this isn't actually necessarily just the only thing a debate can be, but I think of more of an actual stage debate where there's an audience, or it's filmed and put on the internet, like on YouTube, something like that, where there's one side arguing one thing, another side arguing another, and they have the debate either with someone moderating and asking questions, or just them talking between themselves. So that's what I mean when I say debate in this context. When I say argument, I don't mean like a fight. I mean an argument, like a conversation, almost like a debate between two people, but it's just a private conversation more. So it's not necessarily like a set-up debate. It's more of an argument between two people, but not a negative argument. A lot of people now, they hear argument and they automatically think fight, but really argument is just what is the definition of argument? I forget. My brain, I filmed a lot of videos today, so my brain's a little fried, and I'm doing this off the top of my head, so bear with me. But yeah, so argument. It's more of it's not a fight, it's more of a debate, just one-on-one type of thing. That's how I see it. I know that's not necessarily true, because you can still have the debate. Really, debate and argument can be kind of switched for one another, especially when it comes to like one-on-ones. But so for this video, just know that if I talk about debate, it's like a debate with like 2 or more people arguing something, and people watching, or there's some type of audience. And if I talk about an argument, it's just like a one-on-one type of thing, either in person or like on a phone to a friend, that type of thing. But there's this idea in debating, especially, and it has a backing in psychology. If you're debating a topic and someone brings something up and you don't challenge it, you're seen that you agree with that idea. So I'll give you an example of what I mean by this. I was in a debate in university, and we were talking about whether God is good, which actually it was less about God and more about religion. But that whole premise suggests that God exists. And so by just debating it and not bringing up the fact that, well, we've kind of jumped premise here, and we're for this debate, we're admitting that we'll pretend for now that God exists. And I actually started the debate by basically saying that. I'm like, so I just want to make something very clear here, because I'm personally agnostic. I don't know whether God exists or not. I think there's evidence for and evidence against, but I don't think there's any definitive evidence either way. So I'm on the fence about whether God exists or not. I don't know. That's my position. You have your own, fair enough, but That's what I believe. So I started by just saying, I just want to make it clear for people. We are arguing under the assumption that God exists. That isn't necessarily true. I, for instance, don't know whether God exists or not. And I explained that I was agnostic. And if we want to have the debate of whether God exists, we can at another time. But for now, we're just pretending like God exists for this debate. And so you set those parameters, and so people are like, oh, okay, so because otherwise there's this, like I said, there's this assumption with people that, oh, well, God must exist. He believes God must exist because he's debating whether God is good or bad. And actually, like I said, it was actually less about God, more about religion. But it's hard to say whether God is good or bad. But you could definitely say religion is good or bad. So just because someone brings up an idea doesn't mean you have to accept it in a debate. What's interesting is a lot of people get offended when you challenge their preconceived notions. However, these same people also feel like it's okay to challenge yours. So a little hypocritical of a lot of people these days, but if something comes up in a debate and you disagree with it, you don't have to accept it as a premise, and let them know that. But do it in a very respectful way. It's always best when debating to be respectful. I am going to do a whole series on debating at a later date. I'm not exactly sure when, but at a later date, and I'm going to include more information on this then. So just wait till then. I think actually the reason I want to do that is I think debating is becoming a lost art form. It's one of the best ways to share ideas on both sides of an issue, and obviously you can have debates that are very one-sided, and unfortunately there are places that do this. They will like have three people arguing one thing and bring in one person who believes the opposite, trying to set that person up to lose. Also, it can be very one-sided in that you bring someone on that's super knowledgeable, and you bring average Joe with an opinion, which is problematic too. But if the sides are pretty balanced, it's a great way to include information on both sides, and then you can make your own damn mind up at the end of what you believe. So when someone brings something up, and I'm going to use a couple real-world examples, but you don't have to accept that that's reality, especially if you don't believe it personally. Generally, a lot of people try to do this now to gain some type of higher ground on you, and so it's harder to fight someone who's higher than you are, and so what you have to do is, instead of climbing up to their level, negate it from the beginning. Plus, if you allow something to go in, again, like I said, psychologically, people who are watching a debate are going to think that you actually believe it. So I have been arguing, again, not negatively, just a one-on-one debate type of thing, or conversation, with a fair number of people about men's and women's issues recently, for good reason. And there are certain topics, there are certain key words that will come up when you talk about this. I know, for instance, that I'm going to hear patriarchy. I know, for instance, I'm going to hear toxic masculinity. I know, for instance, that I'm going to hear pay gap. In my opinion, well, technically the patriarchy exists, however, not to get into too much detail, the patriarchy exists, however, the patriarchy is, aka the men who run things, is like 1% of 1% of all men. And so to suggest that all men are like that is a little disingenuous, in my opinion. Also, toxic masculinity does not exist, in my opinion. You may disagree, that's fine, fair enough. We'll talk about that, don't worry. And at some point, and at some point fairly soon, actually. Hint, 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 hint. And also, the pay gap, although it does exist, does not exist because of men versus women. It exists based on choices. So they bring up these things. Oh well, yeah, but the patriarchy, like this, and I'm like, okay, but what's the patriarchy? And so respectfully challenge their belief. If you're debating them and you're knowledgeable on the topic, and if you're not knowledgeable on the topic, why are you having a debate with someone? First of all, and again, when I say debate, I mean like with an audience and a whole thing. Why are you having that debate with them if you're not knowledgeable on topics? That would be my first question to you. Secondly, if you are knowledgeable, you know, and you've watched other debates on this issue, which is generally a good idea because generally then you kind of see the patterns of what's going to be brought up. And there, like I said, if you talk about men's and women's rights, you're going to hear patriarchy, you're going to hear toxic masculinity, you're going to hear pay gap. If you know these things, have counters to them. Be able to know a series of questions to ask, so as you can challenge them, so that they don't just naturally gain that high ground from the get-go. Oh, well, toxic masculinity. Oh, okay, so what exactly do you feel is toxic masculinity? Because everyone I've talked to has a slightly different definition. So what would you define toxic masculinity as? Okay, but that's just masculinity, and now you're making that a negative. That's how men act. That's how men biologically act, and now you're making it a negative. So is it that toxic femininity is how women act? Is that a thing too? Because that's what you're doing to men. So should that be the same for women? Ask these types of questions that challenge these preconceived notions to show that A, you do not necessarily agree with them. B, you're not giving them that high ground from the get-go. You generally in a debate want to stay as level as possible. If they try to climb and become holier than thou, that's going to be trouble. So I will be talking more about this, like I said, in later videos, but I do want to highlight the Dr. Phil example. Now, I'm not going to talk about my opinion on the issue itself, just what happened in the debate. I am going to do, it was about transgendered issues and specifically about sex versus gender identity. Hey buddy, it's almost close to supper time and he knows it, so he's letting me know. So I'm going to do a whole series on that later. So I'll talk about my opinion on that later on. So there were a bunch of individuals of different gender identities, as they claimed, and they basically came in with the premise that, okay, biology and sex is one thing and gender identity is another, and the person they were debating was a teacher who was very, very patient with these people, I must say. Go away, fly. Shoo. Was very, very patient with them, but did a great thing in this debate where he challenged that preconceived notion, because they want you to accept that is the truth, and he did not necessarily agree with it. Excuse me, I've been talking for a while, starting to lose my voice. So he didn't necessarily agree with it. So he pointed out to them that I don't believe that gender identity is any different than biology. Again, his words, not mine. And they came back, well, yes, it is. And he's like, well, you claim it is, but you have not provided any evidence to suggest that it actually is. And that was a very good way of him saying, like, yes, you're making this claim, but what evidence do you have for it? Which is a very good tactic in debating, and Unfortunately, like I said, I think I've mentioned this before in this video, debating, it's becoming a lost art form, and we need to actually bring it back because it might actually help a lot of the issues we're facing today. I know that a lot of people, if you don't have the same opinion as them, you're evil, you're horrible, and they would rather scream and shut your free speech down than actually have an intelligent debate with you. I also think that that's mainly because a lot of people today are just sheep and puppets and have been told to believe something, and so believe it. And don't look any further than that at the actual facts. But if we actually shared ideas, that would help, I think, with today's world and the bad path we're going down. So, like I said, there will be a lot more on this in a future series that I do. I will be back. I'm not sure how long. Like I said, I'm filming all of these at once. I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to release in what order, so I'm not going to say how long it's going to be before I'm back. But when I'm back, I will see you. And, well, maybe there were some hints in this video as to what I'll be talking about. Until then, bye-bye.